DraftKings recently changed their scoring to MMA, and I decided to make a video to examine what the changes mean and how it's going to affect how I play. So you can see here the new scoring system versus the old one. I'm going to break down the big differences here. First difference, strikes. You used to get 0.5 for a significant strike. Now you only get 0.2 for a strike and 0.2 for a strike and 0.2 more for a significant strike. So if you think about why do they have to do changes, I say there's really 2 or 3 reasons why they wanted to do changes. The biggest one are these fights that are like, what is going on with the score? One guy clearly dominates for 15 minutes, and then he gets a low score. How's that happen? Well, guy gets on top, lands a bunch of ground and pound, which aren't significant strikes. They're not distant strikes. So they decided to fix that by adding a strike score instead of just significant strikes. So that should help a little bit in that case. Address the 15 minutes of full control that ended up in a low score. So that's there. You also get some points for control time. It's actually not that significant. Some people might think it is. 0.03 points per second. In a fight where you only get 2 minutes of control time, that's just a couple of points. They also got rid of advances, which are 3 points per advance. So this kind of is a trade-off there, but it's a net negative for wrestlers, I actually think. So control time, that will count against the cage and the clinch too, but that also is not very high scoring, so I wouldn't really consider it. Takedowns, reversals, sweeps, knockdowns, all the same scoring there. Fight conclusion bonuses. First round, second round, third, fourth, fifth decision, all those stay the same, but they added this extra bonus, 25 points for a first round win in 60 seconds or less. This is for the Francis Ngannou fight, or Hamzat against Mearshart, where a guy wins in less than a minute, sometimes less than 15 seconds, and he only scores your 90-point first round win, maybe a knockdown, maybe 5 strikes. So he gets like 105 points maybe. This is the most dominant win you can have. A guy finishes in the first minute, just clear crushes the opponent, and they don't score slate-breaking numbers. They score pretty good win, but not even necessarily in the optimal. It's not that great a score. The extra 25 points is going to help a lot. So those 105-point wins turn into 130, and that's where you really need to be in order to be taking down the slate. So yeah, that's the comparison to the old one. I took a look at what fights did this affect the most. So here's the fights in 2020. I sorted by what's the difference. Old scoring versus new scoring. Which fights would have benefited the most? In this case, Jun Young Park, remember that one. The guy's on top. He wins all around 10-8. He's got 13 minutes control time. It's all top ground and pound. He lands 10 significant strikes on the feet, 260 on the ground. So these new strikes points that are 0.2 per strike, that's where he gets a lot of these points. He gets some points for control, loses the advance points, kind of balanced out by the control. See, he gains 23 points for control, but lost 18 for advances. So I wouldn't really read much into that. The big difference here is the 260 strikes that were landed that wouldn't have been counted before. So he ended up gaining 54 points. Here's another case, something similar. Usman was in the clinch against Masvidal, had him pinned against the fence the entire time, was stomping on his feet. Tons of strikes, 263 strikes, tons of control time, 16 minutes. Not that much significant strikes because in the clinch, gets 30 extra control points, gets a lot more points for these regular strikes that weren't significant, gets an extra 48 points. These are massive differences. So there's a couple of these, pretty good guys from getting a lot of strikes that weren't significant, generally happens with a lot of control. Someone's on top ground and pounding for multiple rounds. That's how it happens. The other set of things that do well is right around here. There's a big clustering of around plus 24, plus 25 points. This is where you get that fight conclusion bonus, the 25 points for a first round win. You see Kroom, Kelleher, Nam, Levitt, Hamzat, Newsom. All these are very fast first round wins. They're getting their 25 points more. That makes them very good. All these scores are 120, 127, 115, 120. Like I said before, that 120 turns into 120, 110 turns into 105 turns into a 130. Your first round win plus a knockdown plus a couple strikes gets you in that 125, 127 range. So those after that, stuff changes. A lot of these are up 5 points, 7 points. That's not going to break your slate. That's not even worth really considering too much in how do you construct your lineups. 5 point difference, 100 versus 105, that's noteworthy, but it's not going to change how I go about my process. Now you got to look at what does happen on the other end. What are the fights that lost the most? And this is actually the most important thing of these changes. Look at the pattern here. It's all either you had heavy number of advances, which went away, which weren't fully balanced out by control time. Dvalishvili, 14 advances, 9 minutes of control. He had 16 points for control, but loses 42 points for advances. So he's going to lose 26 points. So a lot of those. And then the other side of ones are Jacek. Something like this. Two fighters standing and just beating each other up on their feet. 186 strikes that were significant, 196 total strikes. So the fact that you only get 0.4 points for a significant strike instead of 0.5 now, because there's supposed to be a blend of regular strikes and significant strikes. But what if they're on the feet, just beating each other up the entire time? Bobby Green, 115 out of 136, 123 out of 124. It's if you have all these fighters that stay on the feet and just beat each other up on the feet, while they're standing, they're going to lose points because you only get 0.4 instead of 0.5. So that's how it's changed the scoring. Now, how's it going to change constructions? Well, think about this is I want more wrestlers because wrestlers now aren't hurt by doing ground and pound. The 0.2 points per strike while you're on top with your control points. It's not great. It's not like you're getting the 3 points for advances. You're getting, significant strikes, but you're not hurt by being a wrestler who just likes to maintain top control. Get on top, spend 5 minutes on there, just delivering ground and pound. You're gonna get a decent score. In the past, it would have been practically a 0, and it's a full void. So a wrestler against a striker when the wrestler is just saying, I want to stay on top. I don't want to risk this guy, catching me on the feet. That's actually a very good matchup stylistically now for scoring. The other thing that this does is I was hoping that DraftKings would make it so it reduces duplicates by making more interesting constructions, but it actually hurts it. So the thing that I was always interested in is when is stacking viable? And that happens when there's total strikes, the striking on both sides is good. So the winner of the fight is generally the expensive fighter, puts up an incredible score like Zhang Wei Li in her fight. 117 she was putting up. Another fight that was stacked was the Nathaniel Wood Casey Kenny fight. That had a stack in it. I think Wood actually lost it, but he was still putting up good points. You can't both be scoring when the fight goes to the ground. One person's on top getting control and advances and landing strikes. The other person on the bottom doesn't really score. You can only get a stack when both people are scoring, which happens when there's trading on while they're standing. Well, trading when they're standing went from 0.5 points per significant strike to 0.4 each. So look at what happens to these 5-round on the feet battles. Your Thompson-Neal, that never went to the ground. That was Thompson just picking them apart from the outside. 171 strikes, 100 significant strikes, 191 of them total strikes. He ends up losing 13 points. Wei Li lost 13. Jacek, 15. It's another good one. Brandon Moreno, that war against Figgy in the final pay-per-view of the year, lost 15 points. Where this becomes interesting is no longer can you stack. When your loser of your fight, so get Jacek here, 93 as an underdog, that's very, very good. That's going to be in your optimal. And pairing that with Wei Li at 117, yet you're going to want both those fighters. Now, only 78 for your loser. That's questionably to be in the optimal. 104 for your winner as a heavy favorite. That's not going to be there. And so you run the numbers. UFC 248, 251, 254. All three of them, stacks were viable. Stacks were needed to be in the optimal. Your Weili Jacek, 251, I forget who that was. 254 was Casey Kenny, Nathaniel Wood. All three of those cards, you needed stacking to be optimal. No more, because it's not possible for both people to score a significant number of points anymore. So overall, there are going to be a much more straightforward scoring. You're not going to have these fights where you're scratching your head, why is that a low score? But I don't like how it hasn't moved us away from high number of duplicates. Hopefully they add some more captains or assistant captains, something to reduce duplicates in the sport, because that's the next issue they need to tackle. Subscribe to the channel to get updates for when I post a new video, and comment down below what topics you want me to address, and I'll try to make a video about them.